Hello, David here at merchantaccounts.ca with our second e-commerce vlogcast, and I have what I think is a really interesting and an often overlooked topic. Design is incredibly important in 2021 for e-commerce. So why is it so often overlooked? And we're going to talk about what I mean when I say that. But I could start by like this. Like if we talked about marketers and we said, what's the most important thing in e-commerce? Marketers could answer that in a bunch of ways. It could be generating traffic, or maybe they'd say better yet, generating qualified leads. Or is it the headline and making sure the headline addresses a problem of the viewer? Or is it the website copy and does it have to build trust? Or is it the checkout funnel and leading the users? But here's my point. What's the glue that holds all that stuff together? It's the design. And it's something I think is way too often overlooked these days. And I think that happens because e-commerce software platforms like Shopify or BigCommerce or every platform, it's mature. So they have, or even WooCommerce, there's tons of really beautiful templates, but beautiful does not equal effective. And so that basically makes my point for me. I think design is a skill. It's something I do believe to some degree you're also born with. Like I can learn to play guitar, I can learn to sing, but I'm not going to out-sing Adele. And I've learned that over the years. There's things that good designers can do fairly effortlessly that I can't do with any amount of effort. So I'm talking today to Simon Cooper at Hybrid Ideas, who's a great designer that I've worked with in the past. And Simon, why don't you tell our viewers a little bit about yourself and your background?
Sure. Thanks, David. Nice to be on here with you. So my background is I trained as a graphic designer about 20 years ago now, which seems like a long time now that I say it. And I've been working in various forms of design ever since, mostly as a graphic designer. Occasionally, I've dabbled in product design, but yeah, so I essentially graduated from Algonquin College in Ottawa, worked in Ottawa for several years, made a jump across the puddle to work in England for a year, which was pretty fun. And then I came back and moved to Toronto, and I've been here ever since. I worked for some ad agencies and some design firms in Toronto. And then eventually in 2007, I branched out on my own and started life as a freelancer. And I've been working as such ever since and dabbling in a few other projects.
That's right. And you know what? See, I've been doing this 20 years too. My 20th anniversary for merchantaccounts.ca was this January. When did that happen? Oh my gosh. I'm
Yeah,
sure you feel the same way.
yeah, oh yeah.
But when you went to college, this is my question for you. 20 years ago, you're in college, you're learning design. I guarantee e-commerce is not front and center. And so I guess my first question is, how much has design changed as a result of the internet and checkout funnels and commerce taking place online as opposed to traditional print media or, other places it would have historically been?
Probably 10 years ago or 15 years ago, when people would ask me what I did and, what was it like designing? And at that time, people used to ask me, do you design more for print or digital? And I said at the time, well, when I started, it was mostly print. Literally, when I was in school, we had a web design class, but web was so rudimentary at the time.
Back
I
in the day,
remember,
Simon, you remember this? Like your web designer was your everything. He's your coder, he's your copywriter, he's your
yeah,
designer. And it's like, no, that's what it was, but it's not what it needed to be.
yeah, he was a webmaster.
You know that we're going to talk about my background. I went to college for design. I don't think you know that. I'll tell you about that in a second because
Oh.
that's a funny story. But sorry, please continue.
Anyway, no. So yeah, so I used to, design primarily for print and digital. So I've been there from the beginning. The almost the very beginning of website design to now, where well, I probably design 2% for print, and the rest is digital. Everything's digital, and so along with that, websites have obviously come along unbelievably from my early days of not being able to use curves in web design to now when anything and everything's possible. So yeah, it's been a huge
It's
shift.
just all squares, exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
That's funny. You know what I want to get to today, but I'm not going to jump the gun, is
Mm,
I have this theory, a very unproven theory. It's just a personal thing that I'm wondering, because design has matured so much,
mhm.
and there's so many nice templates there that people can be lazy and still have nice looking websites, but I don't think they're as effective as they could be. But don't answer that yet, because I don't think I want to get into that quite yet.
Okay.
A quick story, and I'm just gonna. So I mentioned this. I went to school for digital media, because you're talking about back in the day, it was all webmasters stuff. So I went to school 20 some odd years ago for digital media design, where you learned coding, programming, audio, because it was digital media, video, and I really, actually, I didn't even really realize it at first, that I'm a horrible designer. And I truly believe, not everybody's as clueless as me at design, but a lot of business owners don't. Anybody can look at something nice and say, oh yeah, no, that looks nice. But I remember back in the day, I'd be trying to make changes or upload photos, and it wouldn't work. And what I didn't know at the time is the concept of a color palette. Now, I certainly understood a color palette, and some colors match, but what I didn't understand is you get a logo and it has like all the shades and gradients. You follow this recipe, your stuff's going to look right. It's like embarrassingly obvious, but I didn't know. I think a lot of business owners, at least at the start, people take for granted. It's like music, because I write music on the side. It's really well produced or well written music. It sounds that probably a lot of good art looks effortless, but
Correct.
it's all exactly. So I'm going to kind of jump back into it here. So here's a great question, and it's a silly question, but it's an important question because I want you to answer it. How important is design on an e-commerce website?
Very important.
And that's a low-hanging fruit question. What I'm actually asking you, though, is how important is thought and design, not just to look aesthetically pleasing, but to solve a problem, or like design is not purposeless. I always said, this is more a copywriting thing, but I always say this: if your website homepage says welcome to xyz.com, someone's fired, right? Like that's not what it should say. That people are there for a reason. So can you apply that to like a design thought? I'd love you to translate that for me.
Yeah, no, it is a good question, and it's 100% true. When people think of design, first of all, design has a lot of different mediums, right? We could design graphically, which is what I do. We could design buildings, which is what architects do. We could design products. When it comes to graphic design, I think a lot of people, people are aware of graphic designers, but they don't fully understand what happens. And to this day, like I said, I've been working 20 years, and people will often say, people I work with, oh, here's something, can you pretty it up? Can you make this look good? And
I'm pretty sure that I've said that to you, just so you know.
You may have, I don't know, I don't remember. But I hear it often, and it's a fair comment, because what we do in essence is we take information that doesn't look good and we design it in such a way that it looks good. But along with that, and kind of more fundamentally, or more importantly rather, is the fact that we're taking communication and we're changing how things are communicated. And we're using layout, we're using type, we're using colors, we're using imagery. And I think that's kind of underappreciated, or it's not that well known by a lot of people. But as far as websites and e-commerce sites go specifically, there's kind of two components there that you're talking about. There's user interface design, which is essentially the colors, the type, the layout, the way the buttons look. And then there is user experience design. And that is how the information is presented, in which order, because it's the experience that the user has when they're on, that particular website. And so those two things have to go together and complement each other and work together, but they're different. Somebody might look at a site and say, oh, this is a nice looking site, it looks great, but it's a terrible experience, and it's hard to serve, hard to navigate, hard to buy a product. So
right.
so there's
like, you know what? I'm going to cut in, like Flash websites back in the day. Because remember when Flash came, it was so cool. You could animate, you could do the stuff that you couldn't do before, but that didn't mean it was super effective. Yeah.
No, exactly. And it's funny you say Flash, because I remember being in school and someone found a website that somebody in sort of Central America somewhere had designed, that was Flash, and it was incredible. But it was so slow, and it was the beginning of Flash. They may have been paid by Flash was Macromedia, I think.
Yes.
Anyhow, so Flash was very cool, but very, very slow and just not super user friendly.
Yeah, exactly. And insecure and other challenges with it as well over
Right.
the years.
Right.
But it sure was cool. So
Hmm.
I think, you uh, basically we're talking about interface, architecture, navigation, but also the part that was really interesting. My mind's always going in directions especially when I talk to people that are like really smart at this stuff, and I'm always adding my own bit onto it. And when you're talking about it, I'm thinking about reinforcing the messaging because you're
Hmm.
saying you're trying to communicate things, but you're trying to communicate if it's so a good designer should be working hand in hand with a good marketer, or like there should be a strategy to everything. So it's like,
Yes.
what is the message? And there's so there might be lots of messages, and now I'm going to come into my SEO background, and I'm like really militant with this stuff. It's like pick one, because
Yeah.
from an SEO perspective,
Hmm.
you can't optimize for the top 50 things you want to optimize for. It's like get real, pick one.
Yeah.
And so that's what I want you to do. And so from that perspective, I would one of the things that's coming to mind is trustworthiness. Like so merchantaccounts.ca is a payments website. I
Hmm.
know it's very important for our website to look trustworthy because we're a
Hmm.
financial services company.
Hmm.
And I think trustworthiness leads to conversions. When you work with clients and you know that it's like a commercial e-commerce type scenario, do you sit down and think, or encourage them to think about like what are your main goals? Is it trustworthiness or education? Is that a part of the process, or should that be a part of the process perhaps?
That, you know what, it should. And it's funny when you say that. I don't spend a lot of time talking to them about that, and I think it's something that I understand. And I'm probably, now that you've said it, I probably don't do as good a job as I should in communicating that to them, which is, to explain why good design adds trust.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like you said earlier, people can look at things, look at, whether it's packaging, whether it's a website, and they can say, oh, that looks really good. I like how that looks, but they don't know why. They just know it looks
Mm-hmm.
good, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a sign of good design. When people look at it, they feel comfortable in it. They know it looks good. They may not be able to explain it, but trust is a big part of that. If something doesn't look quite right, if you're going to, let's say you were going to book a hotel reservation, you're going on a trip and you want to book
Mm-hmm.
a hotel, and you go to the site, and it's not through an Expedia or one of the travel websites. Uh, Oops, sorry. And when you get to the site, it's like somebody's made their own homemade website, and it's not very good quality. Uh, you'll probably just inherently be nervous or a little bit skeptical about putting a credit card in there because it doesn't look professional. And because it doesn't look professional, you don't have that level of trust.
It's
So,
totally true. It's going all the
mhm,
way back to like broken image links. It's like how to
yeah,
kill a website, which
yeah,
which is one of the reasons it's also worked into Google's algorithm. Like it's really important. And this is like a human thing. I'm sure you'll agree. You have one chance to make a first impression, kind
yeah.
of in life, the same as it is online. You
Hmm.
get to the website and it looks like garbage or something is broken. It's actually there's something called, so I do have a background in marketing, and there's something called fear of purchasing, and people won't commit until you address whatever the fear is. It could be, will
Right.
this work, will it solve my problem? And one of the obvious ones is trustworthiness. It's like, I don't even know if these guys are legitimate. You're killing yourself. And
Yeah.
so yeah, design is so important for that, and it absolutely places an impact on conversions. And I think the type of business affects it as well. So I have
Mm.
some rental properties. I have websites for those rental properties. And because I have a background in all this stuff, like they're clean and they work. But if somebody said to me, if I had to have a broken link or a broken image, and where would I be more worried? I'd be a lot more worried on merchantaccounts.ca than I would be on a rental property
Hmm.
website, right? Because
Yeah.
people, so it's the same type of idea.
Yeah.
And it's interesting how you said that you don't always spend time talking to clients about it, because to a degree your job is to do what people are asking you to do, and you can kind of, you can lead a horse to water, but you
Hmm.
can't make it drink sometimes.
Hmm.
The way that I approach this stuff, so going with the example of merchantaccounts.ca, maybe we can do a couple more examples in a bit, but
Hmm.
like we want people to contact us. So
Hmm.
when people come to our website, it's like the first thing that try to make clear is, hey, we have something to do with the world of credit card processing. And
Hmm.
we try to make it clear we've been doing it a really long time and we're trustworthy. And then I know people usually just want to know the costs. I
Hmm.
like long copy. but a lot of people just like get to the point. So then we lead
Yeah.
people there. And what I'm describing is basically I'm describing a funnel. And so can you kind of talk a little bit about how design, maybe design tips when you're building a funnel? Like this, some of the stuff I do have a background on, but I don't want to assume everybody does. Like one of the things, like this is classic stuff. For you, this will be peer review, but like the biggest, boldest thing on the page is what the eye goes to first. And as a designer, you'll be very good. You can lead the eye where it wants to go. Can you talk a little bit about that? And also maybe does your average customer really realize this? I'm wondering if that's the case.
Yeah, I know. I don't think customers, I mean, unless they're, they're like you and I, they work in this world. I don't think they really realize it. Um, but yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different use cases. People read and consume information differently. That's a fact. So, for example, you like long copy. I'm a terrible reader. I skim. I only read headlines. I just try and get to I'm the guy who wants the price immediately.
Yeah.
So in designing for that, yeah, that's one of the key features in design is, okay, what's our focal point? What do we want them to see first? And how can we get them to see, what we want them to see, then maybe the headline, then maybe the features, then maybe the price, then maybe the buy now button.
Hmm.
So so
Exactly.
in terms of
And so I'm just going to make a point to any of the viewers,
mhm,
and this is such an important. None of it should be accidental. It might seem
no,
like it's knit together,
yeah,
but it's what's the word I'm looking for? Like it's craft. It's engineered a good one is engineered very specifically,
yes, yeah.
exactly as you're saying.
Yeah. Oh, no, absolutely. It has to be. And the more time and effort you put into that experience, and going back to what we were talking about earlier about, how design's key, and you said, there's got to be a marketing team, there's got to be photography that's good. If your
Hmm.
product requires it, there's got to be copywriting. Copywriting is a huge part of it too. When you
Yeah.
take all those things and put them together, when they're done well, they're done really well, and they're very convincing, and
Hmm.
people's conversion rates are higher. I can pretty much guarantee it.
Exactly. And so I guess it depends on the type of client you're working with, because I know you've worked with some really large brands and also you work with smaller companies.
Mhm.
I guess if they have a big team, you're going to be, they'll, I'm guessing they would probably have more instruction for you. Maybe for the smaller clients, especially people that are kind of new to e-commerce, you can help them along with some thoughts. It's like, what's your
Mhm.
goal? And I would think a designer would be a very important part of designing the funnel, because even if
Mhm.
like at merchantaccounts.ca, I have to decide what I want our traffic to do, which is contact us. But
Right.
I should give that to you and be like, how can you help me reinforce these messages along the way? So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the funnel is kind of everything in e-commerce, and yeah, you're right. Designers. I mean, there are designers who strictly do visuals. I happen to have an e-commerce business myself, so I understand a little bit more the how the funnel works. But yeah, it's kind of like a puzzle, right? There's all these pieces. If you put them together, it's good. If you're missing a piece, you're clearly missing a piece, and people recognize that. It doesn't look as good to them, and so it'll be reflected in your sales. And
Well, this I think this segues me perfectly to my next thing that I wanted to ask. It's so I did go to school for digital media, and I was a far better coder than I was designer. Although I'm neither, and I would consider myself neither nowadays. But if you're a designer or a regular person, maybe help. And I think this is advice that I could benefit from myself. How can you work with a designer effectively if you're a regular person or a coder? Help us to understand what we can do as a regular person to help make your outcome be better or you be more effective when it comes to delivering. Well, for us, very simple. It's like help
yeah,
me make this look good and work. Yeah.
yeah. Well, some of it you said earlier, which is, what are your goals? What are you trying to achieve here? Is it, because e-commerce is obviously, what we're talking about, and so people generally want sales. But in your case, like you said, you want them to contact you. Now,
Hmm.
that might not be evident for everybody in every e-commerce website. But a few things that really help designers are, clear communication. What is it that you want? What don't you want? Some boundaries or guidelines. When working with bigger companies, they have really established, brand identities and brand guidelines. So you
Hmm.
can't randomly pick a font or a color and start using it.
Exactly. We're just going to
You,
change this Coca-Cola logo
yeah,
yeah.
I did new Coca-Cola logo for you. It looks awesome. Here, I put it in place. So there's obviously constraints there that you have to design within, which are good because it makes your job easier, especially if you're working for a big company. And then the other thing is just to kind of let us do our thing. Um, Design is kind of a strange one because it's both creative and very sort of technical. So while we can be creative, like I said, there are constraints. And for example, an e-commerce site, you only have a page, an area sort of this big, where you have to have a picture, of the product or a description of the product, and as much
Mm-hmm.
information as you can relate to people in that small space. So yeah, by letting us do our thing, and then just discussing after, we'll present something to you, and it's just a case of looking at it and saying, well, here are the things I like about it, here are the things I don't like, and listening
Mm-hmm.
to our reasoning. But in most relationships, honestly, designers are, while we're good at design, we don't necessarily know your business. Well, we don't know your business as well as you do. So that's where
Mm-hmm.
collaboration is really important, right? You may say to me, hey, Simon, I don't like that, and here's why. And I'll say, well, I didn't think of that, Dave, because it's not,
Right.
I don't understand your
It's not what you
particular.
do every day. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So collaborative.
Communication. I think that's really good. It's one of the things I struggle with. So I have been working with you, as you know, on just some updates recently, and like sometimes it's hard for me because I'm. It's like, hey Simon, I like this,
Yeah.
but it's just not quite right. And I'm sure you love feedback like that. It's ever so helpful.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's all I've got to work with. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So,
Yeah.
but okay. So I'm going to ask this then. What are some tips on design that you think a lot of people might benefit from knowing? And this could be anything. It could be communicating with your designer. I don't know. I'm just going to let you run with it
Yeah,
for a second.
I mean, the first thing that, designers, is kind of a running joke with designers, because this is typical of clients, and I don't blame them for it because I've kind of been on both sides. But this thing that we hear often, which is, can you make the logo bigger? That's something that
Oh.
designers kind of joke about because it's very typical. Because clients think, okay, I'm paying for this space, be it an ad, be it packaging, be it a website, less so on websites, but so I want my brand to stand out. I want it to be bigger.
Hmm.
So here's the tip: white space and cleanliness are your friends. People get overwhelmed by too much visual stimulation, too much information in one space. And the less you have on a page, the more likely you're going to actually communicate what you want to communicate. And a great example of that is if we think way back, for people who are as old as you and I, to the first search engines. Do you remember when Google came out? There was Hotbot, there were all these other search engines, and they literally had their browser windows, their web pages were full of information, and somewhere on there was a field where you typed in what you were
It's like
searting for.
I
Then
think you're
Google came
describing
out.
Homer Simpson's webpage. If you've seen that episode of.
No, I haven't seen it.
But yeah,
Uh,
I'm going to cut in with my example. So on merchantaccounts.ca, back when I was the designer, I'm going 20 years ago, right?
mhm,
But I remember I had someone get me by email one time. It was like, David, I'm just not happy. You've no contact information on your website. You have no phone number, and you had to get it from my email. And so
mhm.
I called him, and I'm like, no, we have a phone number. And he's like, where? And I'm like, well, on the top right, and on the right, and on the left, and in the footer, and on the bottom, and in the nav menu under contact us and about us. And he's like, oh. I'm like, no, you know what? That's actually not your fault. It's my Homer Simpson website with
Right.
10 zillion links. And, like, that's one of the white space things that I've learned. Because, like, I don't even, how people say sometimes they know just enough to be dangerous? I don't even know that much. But I have picked up tidbits. And one
Yeah.
of the ones is the white space allows your eye to focus
Yes.
somewhere,
Yeah.
you know? Yeah.
And it's calming, and it allows you to breathe. Like, website, but that wasn't your fault, because back then that's what websites were. They were a jumble. Try to get everything above the fold. And for
Mm-hmm.
those of you who don't speak design language or know, the fold is a term from the newspaper era, or which are we sort of still live in, where
Mm-hmm.
when you fold a newspaper in half and put it in a box, what you see at the top to where it's folded was given priority space. That was the best space, because that's where people looked when they picked it up. And so that translated to website designs, because the top of the page without scrolling is called above the fold. And that's the premium real estate where you want the most information. So web designers, webmasters used to jam as much as they could up there. And that was just how it worked. And then slowly in
Mm-hmm.
the last decade, people started realizing, users don't mind scrolling. It's not a big deal to scroll. And it makes for a better experience if you have less information. Let it breathe. Let them sort of digest one thing at a time before presenting them another as they scroll. So
Hmm.
yeah, that's a big one. Just white space and simplicity.
That's interesting. I remember I worked with another designer one time. I'd like to know your thoughts on this because it was really interesting to me. So I was going through revision X of the website, and they said, no, 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 this is no good because your fonts and the way something about the buttons, it's like, no, no, that's like 2 years out.
Mm,
Any designer that looks at this is going to know that it's stale. And I remember thinking, but my customers aren't designers. Like, and he was
yeah.
talking literally like, this font is hot, this font is hot, this font is out. And I'm like, no, this is like a super clean, good looking font. Do you think that some designers can get too like, I could see if you're a fashion brand,
Yeah.
or something
Yeah.
like, but like a payments company, I'm not trying to take over the world with my design taste, but
Yeah.
maybe I'm wrong about that. In fairness, I'd like to know your opinion on it.
No, I mean, there's some validity there, but what you said, do some designers take it too far, and and designers sometimes who have less experience are more, they think about the work that they're producing for themselves, their portfolio. Do they like it? Maybe a little bit more than they should. Whereas what they should be thinking is, who's the audience? What will they think? But at the
Hmm.
same time, if something's really out of date, then the general public will pick that up too. So there's a balance.
Yes.
You don't want to be super out of date, but at the same time, depending on your brand, you don't need to have the latest absolute everything. Um, but that, I mean, and that's why websites need a refresh. It's good to refresh your website well, no, I don't know, maybe every couple of years, but at least, every 3 or 4 years, you need to update it
Hmm.
because things change, colors, taste changes, fonts, usability, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's kind of important, but it's not the end of the world.
That's, what a great segue into something I'm hoping you'd be willing to do. So I would like to go through a couple websites for examples of, I don't, maybe good and bad design is not like, I don't want to like burn anybody's website or anything like that,
Mhm.
but maybe you could critique some designs and maybe we could just pick something up because when I see something and you see it, I'm sure we don't see the same thing, like
Okay.
in
Yeah.
terms
Yeah.
of, yeah. So
Yeah.
would you be able to do that?
Absolutely. I would be happy to. Okay. I'm going to share.
So awesome. So I can see you brought up Zara. I know that is a clothing company, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. You are 100% correct. So
Maybe
this
before
is,
you go, Simon,
yeah,
wouldn't this be a good way to do it? Because I can be the regular schmuck, and you can be the expertise here.
sure.
So when I hit, and by the way, I shouldn't call it because I do have a background in marketing and like website conversion. So I can look at this from a bunch of ways, but not from probably a proper, well, certainly not from proper design way. The
Right.
first thing that I notice about that homepage when you hit it, the only thing that I notice, well, first of all, their logo is quite big, but I guess
Yeah.
it's because their brand. They're clearly promoting the studio collection, and
Hmm.
if it wasn't for that, and if I didn't know what they did, I wouldn't know what they did. To me, they're not communicating anything strong on this homepage other than to go to the studio collection. Uh, but then again,
Right.
like I don't even know what the goal of our website is. Is it to make people come in store, right? Like we don't even know what their goal really is. But boy, I've
Yeah.
been yammering. I'd love to know what you think of this homepage.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's good questions there, and you're right. I don't know what their goal is with the website, but my wife was on here yesterday and was frustrated, and so it made me think about it as one to pull up that, um, while initially this looks like a nice design, we've got a big, strong, powerful image. I've just been talking on and on about white space, and there's clearly white space around here. There's one, what they're doing well is they're focusing on one thing here on this homepage. You're right. To me, the logo is twice as big as it needs to be. It would just push everything up, and it's a little overwhelming. Um, but what's weird about this site is when I scroll down, there's really nothing else except the newsletter. And okay, that's fine. We want people to shop, or we want them to sign up to our newsletter. Fair enough. Those are good goals. But when I
But
click
wait,
on,
Simon, where's the shopping? Is that the studio collection call to action? Where do you
well,
even see the
it,
shopping?
exactly, this is the thing. So it took me a little while to figure this out earlier. So I clicked on the studio collection because I want to see it, obviously. And there's some small copy up here, the neutrals, fall, winter, Zara Man collection. Okay, so this is new. I scroll down because the image I was looking at originally was this. Whoopsies. Let me go back. Was this red coat? I'm assuming that's the studio collection because that's what it says right on it, available now. So when I click on that, instead it takes me to this. So I'm a little bit confused, but that's okay, no problem. I'll scroll. I don't mind scrolling. Well, here's another image, but it's in black and white, so I can't see if that's the red coat I like. There's very little copy. There's tiny copy here. It says new, plus 3 colors, cloth coat,
Hey, I
151.
gotta cut in with a comment. I've gotta cut in with a comment.
Yeah, go for it.
Like, it's just so clear who their user base is because I can guarantee that
Hmm.
my mom can't read that font. And without my glasses, I probably. So they're targeting a young, sophisticated, like
Yes.
technically sophisticated user, obviously.
Yeah.
And if anybody from Zara sees this, which I think is unlikely, but we're certainly not meaning to attack your website, but like it's interesting. It's an interesting case study because you're clearly doing something. Simon, there's a above to the right of that image. There's a search box. To the right of that, looks like a view slider. What does that thing do?
I don't know. Oh, there we go.
Oh,
So,
interesting.
okay, so interesting. So yeah, so instead of having the one item per page, let me try that again. Yeah, so instead of having one, I can drag that slider and it'll show me multiple items.
I almost feel that this website is designed mobile first with almost some compromises to the desktop experience. I just have this feeling because even that on the left to
Yeah,
the left of the logo, the 3 lines, that's a mobile type of navigation
yeah,
menu typically. So I
yeah,
feel this is a strongly mobile first website, which maybe is the right thing to do because their customer base being young probably browses mostly on a mobile device.
yeah, you're absolutely right. It makes sense. I hadn't thought of that, but yeah, no, I think you're 100% right. This is almost like, they should have had, you know, are you on a mobile phone or a desktop? Um,
But I'll tell you this, and I'm not a designer, this sure is one monochrome website.
it really is, yeah. And it's, and partly that's the style. I think right now, black and whites, grays, whites are in very monochrome colors. You scroll down a bit, then you start to see some color appear. Um, but I just feel like even though, it's very stylish, it does look beautiful in a way, but I feel like they're making it difficult for me to find what I want, which frustrates me a little bit. And it's just I feel it's a little too stylish, if I can say that, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, somebody maybe a designer, a very listen.
Mm.
That it totally looks nice, but maybe somebody, like you said before, sometimes the designer get a little too much leeway, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
yeah,
exactly. So here I've just clicked into one of the products, and this is better. At least in here, at least as somebody who's shopped online before, I feel like now I'm in a spot that I feel more comfortable, which is a product page. There's images that appear here. Okay, so I can click through these, or I can scroll down. Again, the copy is very small, but I think your point's well taken that this is obviously made for younger people. Um, Over here, you've got, in terms of the communication hierarchy, the first thing I see is the photos, and that's great. That's what they want me to see. They want me to look through the photos and fall in love with this product. The next biggest thing on the page, other than the add to cart button down on the bottom right, is the wool blend coat, which is the title. So that's doing a good job. Then slightly smaller, but in all caps, which I don't love, is the description: full cut coat made of wool blend, et cetera, et cetera. There's some colors, there's some sizing, add to cart. Then for
I have
some,
an issue with that. Like my issue there
mm,
is that. So in fairness, again, to I really want to be fair to Zara.
mm,
I'm looking at you're sharing on Google Meet here,
mm,
so it's not truly a full screen experience. But that font for the price is so small, it's
mm,
almost like the fine print on,
yeah,
an insurance policy.
yeah,
So
yeah.
it's interesting. I'm sure that this is you know what? Do me a favor. I don't know if you can let me see. Is there a way to look at this? You know what? Maybe we don't need to look at it too much deeper because I think you've made such interesting points. And maybe, yeah. See, there it is on mobile. And oh, yeah. See, on mobile, I just
It's
have a
better.
feeling, yeah, that it's
Yeah.
going to be better. And what almost an interesting use case because I don't think this happened accidentally. Well,
No.
let me rephrase that. We obviously know this didn't happen accidentally.
Yeah.
And so this is where they're trying to accomplish a goal. I'm not exactly clear what it is,
Yeah.
And maybe it's more to get people in store, make people aware of their line to come into the store to try it on, right? Like it's
It
hard
could,
for us to
yeah,
know.
it could be, yeah. But you're 100% correct. I mean, this is clearly a mobile first site, and that makes sense because most people visit, especially, especially this demographic for these kind of products, they will be there on their phones. But there's still some things that I think they could improve on here. Like where has all the information gone? I can't scroll down anymore. So the only thing I can do is scroll over these images, which is great. I want to see the coat before I were to consider buying it. But this is the rest of the information. It's a new wool coat blend. It's $259 Canadian, add to cart. So
Interesting.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's kind of bizarre how they've left out any of the features and benefits of the jacket. Um,
Yeah, you know what? There's a lot of classic stuff that I think we would both argue they're not doing.
mhm,
They might argue if they were on the phone, well, there's a reason why, and there might be a very good reason. But to
mhm.
me, at least by a traditional marketing standpoint, like let me phrase it this way. Boy, I'm about to make a really good point. I think you'll agree with this. If merchantaccounts.ca was designed this way, it would be a travesty. My
Yes.
older average customer couldn't read the font.
Yeah.
That's not really clear. There's no clear messaging. There's
Mhm.
no benefits or anything like that. So maybe the argument is in design. Coming back to the very start, first one of the very first things we said, right?
Yeah.
In design, what are you trying to accomplish, right? Because
Yeah.
all these elements should sew together
Yeah.
to form a real game plan.
Yeah.
So thank you for taking me through this one. Do you have maybe one
Um,
more we could do?
I do have another one, and this is an example of I would say, a more traditional approach. This is a company in the U.S. that makes high quality men's grooming, well, razors and accessories. And
Interesting.
what I like about this website is right off the top, I know exactly what it's about. Now, this is obviously a much smaller product line. So, in Zara's case, in their defense, they have a lot to communicate. They have a lot of different products. They have a lot of different audiences, men, women, probably children. Whereas this is simpler. So it's easier for them to relate to us quickly what it is that they sell. But I think they do a really good job. The video is clear. It looks good. As a man, I can see that lather looks great. Uh,
Hmm.
and then they've got one big line of copy that says high performance grooming. So it's very clear where I am and what they're offering me right off the top. Then they've got a
Simon,
shop now button.
you said something earlier in this discussion, and you've said it to me recently in a separate discussion about photography being really important. And
Mm-hmm.
whoever did this video, like that is a beefy looking razor.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that photography, I'm pretty sure. Like if they had to have this website and they didn't have that asset,
Mm-hmm.
and they only had a static image or maybe just an image of the razor on a white backdrop,
Mm-hmm.
so much less effective.
Oh,
So this is
absolutely.
an example I think of. This is a great asset. However, they've shot and incorporated this to the site.
Oh yeah, no, I agree completely. A picture's worth 1,000 words. So if we scroll down on this one, so right away, oh okay, so these are the products. So there's the razor, and there's some really nice effects. Like when I scroll over it, they show a photo of it being used in a different color, which is great. So I can instantly see, okay, I can kind of see the size of it. I can see it in use, and I can see that there's more colors available. And the same for
Right.
this little stand, right? Oh, there it is. There it is being used. So they do a great job of presenting, sorry, even just this far, what their products are. And here I see the prices. So at this point already, I know that I'm looking at high performance grooming products. I can see them on white background and in use. I can see that they're beautifully designed. And then I can also see the price. So if I'm not interested and this is outside my price range, or I don't shave, whatever it is, I can leave now. It's fine. But if I'm
Hmm.
interested and I continue, then I see, okay, so now they've got hair products, they've got skin products. They tell a
I've
bit of
just
the
got to say,
story.
Simon, this is something that you said a couple times in our discussion. It's so clean. Like the eye always knows where to go
Yeah,
every time you're on a page on this website.
yeah, exactly. When I design websites, what I love is in each sort of view like this, like each sort of screen full, we'll call it. If it only has one thing, like this one, you could say, okay, it's got some copy and there's some images there, but I'm clearly going to be reading the copy. Then when we go to this next section, okay, it's a full section. and it's just very clean and easy to consume that information. I'm not distracted by 10 other things.
And the marketing guy in me wants to point out that there's testimonials in
Yes.
there. So they're every part of this seems like they're doing something quite intentional in a good
Yeah.
way.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that
Down
right there.
here.
You asked, we answered. Boom. Another example.
Yeah. And then in case you weren't sure and you're concerned, oh, free USA shipping and returns, oh, lifetime warranty, and they have a guarantee. Oh, good. I'm intrigued. So then let's go and actually check out one of the pages. Let's look at the razor since it's pretty cool looking. Um, okay, now this page, what I love about it, again, the big beautiful image. It looks great. I mean, they've obviously done a great job on photography. I can click through here and see, different ones. There's actually even a video here I can watch. There's different colors. All I need to know is right here at the top. So the name of the product is the Single Edge 2.0. It shows me some underneath that, the stars, showing it's got over 2,000 reviews. They're 5-star. It gives me the price, the colors, and a huge button that I cannot miss that is in a different color. So even
That would be called the call to action, would it not?
yeah, it is. You got it. The call to action.
Yeah.
And underneath that, here it goes. So he says Canadian order. You can tell we're in Canada. So it's telling us when our order will arrive. And then just underneath that, it's got some copy that introduces the product, tells you about it. And really succinctly, if you want to know more what's in it, you can click on these boxes, these drop-down boxes, and learn as much as you want. But it's so clean and inviting. And the call to action, it really catches your eye.
Yeah, I also, and then there's more credibility because you have like NBC and stuff on there.
Yeah.
This is just like a textbook, and it's ticking a lot of the boxes. And compared to Zara, which I'd call more avant-garde or whatever word you would use,
sure, yeah.
this is ticking all of the boxes on, I think, what you're kind of supposed to do on a really nicely put together site that they're trying to make people aware of what their product is and sell it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Interesting. Really interesting. Well, thanks for taking me through those examples. I thought you'd have a couple interesting examples, and you certainly did, so I appreciate that.
My pleasure.
Maybe what I'll do is I'll ask a question now. And I don't know if you have one of these, but do you have a story or a reference about maybe when you worked with a client and you saw a problem and how you fixed it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it happens very regularly. I mean, design, to your point earlier, I think you mentioned that, a lot of people don't really understand design or what it is, but design is actually, I think if you look it up, it's actually problem solving. And so in my
Yes.
case, it's visual problem solving and communication problem solving. And so let me think. I'm trying to think of a specific example. I don't know if I can think of one offhand because there's so many. Because typically that's what happens. My clients come to me and they say, "We need this design. Maybe it's a website, maybe it's a logo, maybe it's a sales brochure." And the challenge is to communicate to them. Okay, well, that's great. Let's take a website for example. Okay, so what is your core message? What is the one thing, your value proposition, the one thing that you need people to know? In the case of the Razor website we just looked at, it was high quality grooming tools for men, and that was the one thing they said. I think it was 3 or 4 words at the top of the homepage. So
Right.
it's about how do we communicate in order, in a sort of communication hierarchy. So the first thing we want them to know, big and bold in their face. Then for people who read that or see that and go, oh, I'm interested. Then underneath that, you can have a sub tag or a sub headline that says, here's a bit more information about what you're interested in, and then click here to learn more. So it's really about communicating in chunks as opposed to trying to tell the story all at once. How do we
Yes.
entice them with good copy and tell it in small bits?
Can I ask a question on that? Because I think you and I think quite alike, or maybe this is just like people that have a background in this think about. The way that I do it is I'm always trying to think, what is the customer's next concern going to be? And I try to address it just before it can coalesce or crystallize in their mind. Kind of like just they did on that website. It's high quality grooming products, and then this is this, and we're credible, and here's the references. And I'm guessing that you take a similar approach when you're looking at this type of thing.
Yeah, and you said this at the top that there's a lot of templates out there because this has been tested for a while, right? E-commerce has been around long enough now that there's sort of that supply website, the men's razors or the razors. It's a great example of how we've learned some things and we're now starting to use them. and we communicate them in such a way that they're clear and they make sense to people. So there's sort of become a bit of a hierarchy, um, and yeah, I think it's really helped people to sort of understand that at the top, what we want to do is we want to tell them, a bit about the product, but also why. Why did you make this product? Why should I care? Why is it better than others?
Hmm.
And then, we as we think it through, we think, okay, so somebody's coming to the site either through Google search, they've seen an ad. So they're either intentionally looking for a razor, or they happen to see an ad of yours or get told by someone and they're coming to check it out. So at that point, it's really, you're not saying this is, here's our razor, buy it. You're saying we make the greatest razor and here's why. And so you're thinking about people who are exploring razors in general,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
they're sort of considered top of funnel. And then what you want to do is give them more information so that they're learning more about it. And then you want to give them the nitty gritty, which I showed at the bottom, which was free shipping, free returns, lifetime warranty, so that you're answering questions, you're removing doubt, and you're
Now,
removing friction from the potential of a sale.
so I have a question. I'm so curious to know your answer to this because I did think that website was really good,
Mm-hmm.
and you made a point that e-commerce has been proven, the templates have been tested. But my guess, and I'd love to know, and you're very welcome to disagree with me, is that's not a pure template. Because I think when you're doing something retail, the order of things changes, and that's my concern when merchants just use a template off the shelf
Mm-hmm.
and they are limited with their changes, because a lot of the times when you use a Shopify template, I'm not picking on Shopify, but it's like, it's kind of like this is how it works, and it's hard to make it go in a
Yeah.
different direction. But with them it was, I think it was, this is what the product does, quality,
Mm-hmm.
trustworthiness,
Mm-hmm.
buy maybe, and then like, oh, got more questions, here's more answers, and then
Yeah.
buy again or something. But it's not always that order. Do you think that was a customized thing, or do you think that was an off-the-shelf template most likely?
Um, I think it was a customized template because you're absolutely correct. The good thing about templates is that anyone can have a website quickly. The bad thing
Yes.
about templates is, in my experience, and I've seen this happen a lot, is that somebody will buy a template, and a lot of the templates are well designed. I mean, they are. They're,
They
as a
look
web
great.
designer, they look great. The problem is somebody buys it, they start to mess around with it, and it doesn't look so great anymore because
Very true, yeah.
they may not be a designer, and so things that they don't know about or understand, come back to bite them. So that was, I know for a fact, that was a customized website, and they made a lot of changes, and it's really important. You're right, because every brand's different, and people have different questions, and you want to present different answers, and products are different. Um, and I've been hearing a lot more about this, that a lot of e-commerce sites are moving more to what's called headless commerce, which is
Yes.
merchantaccounts.ca, where we want to build our own website the way we want to have it. And not only that, we don't want to pay as many fees to these other guys. We
To
want
the
to have as much
platform.
money as we can and have the
Yeah.
platform. So yeah, so there's pros and cons to both. Templates are great, but I think you still need a designer, and you still need to know what you're doing, and they may not be the right solution for you as you grow. So there's sort of pros and cons there, I guess.
Well, you're totally, agree with you so completely. And Stage, listen, if you're launching your first website or e-commerce website, it's so much more accessible. It's okay to have stage one, stage
Mm-hmm.
two, stage three, and stage four.
Mm-hmm.
Don't go from, I even tell people this, like, if, let's just say you had $1 million budget for an e-commerce website. By the way, that's a pretty darn good budget for anyone. But let's just say a small to mid-sized company had $1 million budget. Do you know what it would be? Be about 95% wasted, because you don't know what your problems are for the most part. Like, so having that first one to get you live and then learn and improve your conversions and all that stuff. And I personally skew in a way that's probably not beneficial in some ways, because I always want custom, because I don't like being roped in.
Yeah,
But those ropes are also guides, and they help,
yeah,
and
yeah,
so there's definitely a strong argument for both.
yeah.
And Simon, I think we are coming up to about our scheduled hour here, and this has been like a super. I knew it would be an interesting discussion. Before you go, maybe you could tell people where they could find you, maybe the type of work that you're particularly good at or like doing, so that we might be able to just let our viewers know.
Yeah, no, thank you, David. Yeah, so I can. So my name's Simon Cooper. You can find my website at Hybrid Ideas. So it's hybrid like a car, ideas.ca. And yeah, I mean, I'm interested in all kinds of creative work. My experience involves everything from coming up with brand strategies, like helping customers. Oh, someone's here. Maybe an e-commerce delivery. From helping people or brands come up with their story and figure out what they want to say and how they want to say it, through to the logo design, the brand identity. So that's all the fonts and colors and how the imagery is portrayed, all the way through to websites and printed material and packaging. So pretty much the full gamut. Yeah, and hybridideas.ca is a website. So yeah, thanks for letting
Perfect.
me plug.
No problem, Simon. I'm hoping maybe you'll come back on again sometime, because I'd actually like to do one in the future where we bring on like some marketers and SEO, and it'd be so interesting to do the same exercise, but with even more
Yeah,
expertise in each field.
yeah.
But thank you so much, and have an awesome day there.
Thanks, David.